Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 95. What are you willing to give up? This subject comes up for me as I have all these boxes of stuff in my kitchen. They're part of my identity. You know, I'm an adult and I've worked really hard, and so finally now I can have these books that I like so much. I mean, I don't know about you, but like when I walk into a bookstore, I'm like, yes, this is so cool. There's so many ideas here. There's so many choices and possibilities. And over time, I've built up a collection of books. It's like 1,000 books. It's my personal bookstore. And I get that feeling when I see them on a shelf when I'm near them. I also have a bunch of yo-yos. And very specifically, I set out to have a collection that would tell the history of the development of the aluminum ball-bearing yo-yo. I have prototypes of the very first popular aluminum fixed-axle yo-yo, and also a prototype of the first aluminum ball-bearing yo-yo. And I also have just a bunch of weird stuff kind of in between, and a bunch of like modern competition stuff. So I've got this miniature elkenite yo-yo. It was never like in a production run. Elkenite's this exotic metal that's used in arc welding torch tips. Turns out it's really dense, and that makes it good as a material for a mini yo-yo. I have this weird guy. See, these are like knobs that you can turn, like here. And when you turn this knob, I'll open it up and show you because I think this is like an engineering marvel. Come on, unscrew. There we go. Okay. When you turn the knob, this clear piece of plastic here is either going to move away or move into the body of the yo-yo. And it provides the friction that touches the string and causes the yo-yo to come back up. And so when you turn the knob in one direction, the yo-yo becomes more responsive, more likely to come back up, and when you turn it in the opposite direction, it tends to want to sleep more. And this was one of the first innovations by a company called Yo-Yo Factory that was founded by I think the son of the guy who owned a company called Pro-Yo that was very popular in the late 90s. I have this guy, the Oxy TI, the very first Oxy TI from 2009. It is an engineering marvel. Here we have a copper insert. I don't know if you can see that. This is like the worst camera in the world. Into a titanium body, and we've got that little silicone ring to provide the friction. And then on this side we have a custom machined axle with O-rings and a concave silicon nitride bearing, and this string has a Kevlar fiber woven into it, so it's a super durable string. If the Secret Service had a yo-yo, if the CIA had a yo-yo, this would be their yo-yo. It might be my favorite yo-yo of all time. We've got a prototype of the Daisy Fly. The Daisy Fly can be seen right here. It's this yellow one. And so this is a prototype of that. It was made during the design process for this early Diffio. I have a Dirty Eye made by Russell Andert. I think there's like 4 of these ever made. It is his only titanium yo-yo, and I've got even more stuff. Hold your horses. Yeah, we've got another Diffio prototype. We've got one of the original General Yo 5 stars. This is an extremely well machined yo-yo out of Southern California. I have one of the original painted peaks. This is known as the Volcano Peak. And let's see if we can get the volcano showing on there. Well, anyway, you could see it in real life. It was painted by a guy who does custom jobs on cars, so it looks extremely good. And we've got even more yo-yos. This is the Fire Swirl Peak. It's got a really fancy anodization job on there. And we've got another, the Plaid Painted Peak. Another custom job by Levi. We have some of the original Underdogs. That was a crazy yo-yo with a deep groove cut into it to allow people to do cooler tricks. Of course, we have one of the original Duncan freehand MGs for magnesium, one of the first magnesium yo-yos. And Duncan's first really high-end yo-yo. That came out back when I was in college. Let's go look at some more. Yeah, we have, this is Lewis's personal collection that I actually play with. So you can see I've got Titanium TI Walker. I've got Kevin's Dirt from the Russell N. Dirt yo-yo team. And just a lot of cool stuff. I had this one, I believe it's a Majesty, General Yo Majesty, and I had a custom anodization job done to it. And you know, this is a COYW canvas, and really skinny mini there, slimline butterfly. Flying V is the name of that yo-yo. Oh, and then of course, two more freehand MGs. See, this yo-yo case was lost by the people at the Orlando airport when I went to the World Yo-Yo Contest in 2006, and several years later, I found it online, and I found the contents being sold on eBay, and I just opened it up in the wrong direction. Well, maybe that was the right direction. Who knows? There is no right direction. Even more yo-yos. I've got a modified freehand signed by Steve Brown right there. Got a gold-plated pyro. I've got every grind yo-yo ever made. The Grind Mutant, the Grind Master, the Grind Machine, the Grind Machine 2, and a Fast 301. Most people have never seen a Fast 301. Well, most people haven't seen any of these, let's be honest. But even in the yo-yo world, most people haven't seen a Fast 301. I've got the Yo-Yo Factory Hype. That was another variation along these lines. And a Good and Evil 2. Nope, Good and Evil 1. I lied. That was a really cool yo-yo. Also made by H-Spin, same people who made the Pyro right here, which my mom gave me one of those in a sock one year. Good memories from that. And a Spike Fly. Oh, don't drop the case, Lewis. See, this one's got spikes on it, so you can use it as a top as well as a yo-yo. And there's a video on YouTube called Metal Madness where you can see somebody playing with that. That's pretty badass. This is a yo-yo modified by a guy in Taiwan who goes by the name ML online, Moonlight. And he applied like a carbon fiber, I don't know if you can see it, covering on it. That's really cool. And that's it for that case. Don't drop it. And then finally we've got this case. Oh. All right, get in front of the camera, Lewis. Everybody wants to see yo-yos. Every yo-yo jam ever made. Well, maybe not every yo-yo jam ever made, but a lot of the yo-yo jams that were ever made. So, here. Oh, so many yo-yo jams. A Fat Boy, Mega Spin Factor, Super Spin Factor, Black Nova, a Wicked Factor, a Big Kahuna, the Linda Spiegel Spin Factor, 3 different Doc Pop Spin Factors, and a bunch of Night Moves 3s up there, Hitman, Night Moves 2, Klesia, Sigma Blade, and I guess Sigma Blade 2 is probably down there also. Yeah. Yo-Yo Jam's a cool company too. Yo-Yo Jam's claim to fame is that they had a yo-yo that was a hybrid of metal and plastic. So they would put metal around the rims, and that would give the yo-yo more of a weight bias in the rims, which allowed it to spin for longer because it had more angular momentum. And yeah, then you could do more tricks on it. Close the case, be careful. Oh. Yeah, so turns out I got a lot of yo-yos, and everything you saw there is a fraction, and not a particularly large fraction, of my complete collection. I have stuff I could talk about for days, and I find the whole thing incredibly interesting, from the manufacturing processes to the business practices of the companies, to the histories of the companies, to the players, to the development of the tricks over time, the engineering that goes into each piece of the whole process in terms of coatings and ball bearings and spacings and tolerances, and the different countries where the yo-yos are coming from, the different people who are making them, and what other things are the people making. Are they making sports car parts also? Are they making aerospace parts also? And how do those projects inform their view of yo-yo design? What happens when you do these different blast coatings to impart different matte finishes to the yo-yo? Just all kinds of stuff. I think it's really cool. I've got so many of them, and it's just really fun to think about this stuff, and it's kind of a jumping off point for me for thinking about all different kinds of things, because you can look at how a yo-yo business is run, and then you can say, well, how is that different from the way that a software business is run, or a clothing business, or whatever it is? So now we've covered. Lewis has a ton of books. Don't need to show you the books. Lewis has a ton of yo-yos. He's really obsessed with yo-yos. And I was hoping that someday in my adulthood that I would have a setup like Lucky Meisenheimer, right? So he is a doctor out of Florida. He is probably has the world's largest yo-yo collection. And it's a shame that this vase, I don't know how to say that, is here. I guess it's probably depicting a yo-yo somewhere in that scene to show how old yo-yos are. But yeah, the important part of this picture is all the stuff behind it. What you're seeing now is his yo-yo room. It is a 2-story room. The bottom story is his office, and it's got some books, and I believe it also has some yo-yos. And then the top floor has this kind of wraparound balcony thing, because it's a 2-story room, yep. And there are cases and cases of just yo-yos all around the edge of this. So he can walk up like this spiral staircase and look at his yo-yo collection, and that would be really fun for me, because it would kind of bring back all these different memories of studying all these different parts of yo-yo history. And like, this is just one section of one of his cases. Yeah, you can see like a grind machine up there. So pyro down here. Some of the same yo-yos I just showed you are also in his collection, or at least from the same manufacturers. And this is a cool thing about buying a home, guys, is that when you buy a home, you know that you're going to be there for 10 years, so you can actually self-actualize with the home. You can buy a home and then set up a really, really cool yo-yo room and enjoy that room for 10 years and enjoy just staring at them yourself or telling other people about them or decorating, seeing fun colors every day. You wake up in the morning and you see the yo-yo collection and you're just like, yeah, I'm happy. And here we got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Self-actualization is at the top. Being able to express yourself through your ownership of stuff. But it's not really the ownership of the stuff, it's the ability to tell the stories and have this kind of nice illustrate, oh, see, there's a good and evil 1 and then a good and evil 2, which I'm sure is somewhere in these cases. Anyway, don't get distracted by the yo-yos, Lewis. Point is, this is about self-actualization. Like, yo-yos is something that I personally think is cool. It is different about me than other people, and so my ability to build a cool yo-yo collection that other people don't have is like a unique expression of my uniqueness and creativity in some ways. Because I have to select the different ones, I have to find them, I have to decide how the story is going to be told, I have to research everything and frame it in my own way. And the problem, right, is that where I live, square footage is $700 per square foot. And so the reason why all of these books and all of these yo-yos are just sitting around in boxes is because there's no way for me to get the square footage I would need to have this stuff out and displayed and cool and available without very dramatically raising my fixed costs. Because remember, paying off the condo was like 44% of my fixed cost went down. Well, the condo that it paid off is a fraction of what the homes in this area cost, what more square footage in this area costs, especially now in 2018. So if I were to double the square footage of the place where I'm staying, it would quintuple, 500%, 600%. It would dramatically raise my monthly living costs, and that would crush any chance I have at financial independence before I am old. And, on top of the fact that, upgrading the place is not really possible, these yo-yos and books have a high carrying cost. So I'm just going to read the definition of carrying cost to you from Wikipedia. In marketing, carrying cost of inventory or holding cost refers to the total cost of holding inventory. This includes warehousing costs such as rent, utilities, and salaries, financial costs such as opportunity cost, and inventory costs related to perishability, shrinkage, and insurance. Holding cost also includes the opportunity cost of reduced responsiveness to the customer's changing requirements, slowed introduction of improved items, and the inventory's value and direct expenses, since that money could be used for other purposes. Well, guys, if I sold all of these books and all of these yo-yos, that money could be used for other purposes that are more in line with my long-term goals, including financial independence and including, making better video material to teach people about saving money and to teach people about planning for their long-term goals. Invested money grows exponentially over time. That's what compounding interest is. That's why it's so powerful. And so not selling this stuff, it's really a high cost because I'm only like 33. If I was like 83, there was a good chance I was going to die in the next 10 years, then okay. There's not that much more time for my brain to decide what happens to these resources. But at 33, you've still got another 60 years to decide what happens with these resources. And so it is a high opportunity cost. And it's a bummer because I hope you can tell, I genuinely like this stuff. I like telling the story. I think it's really interesting. And I think it actually connects with a lot more things than people realize in the beginning. And those are the topics I love. It's the topics that have an emotional dimension, a technical dimension, a financial dimension, as well as just cool. I mean, I could probably play a cool yo-yo video right now to show you how cool the tricks are. They are mind-blowing. But the positive emotional response I have to this stuff when I see it, like, ooh, cool yo-yo, has now bumped up against the analytical thinking in terms of like my long-term goals. How am I going to execute? What do I have at my disposal to push these long-term goals forward? My long-term goal brain knows that these yo-yos are holding me back, even though I still have a positive emotional reaction when I see them. And even though I really like them and I really like the books, I think it's all really cool. If you look at my current budget, I'm down to like $1,271 for fixed costs each month. And if I cut out a lot of the optional stuff, if I just kill the cell phone entirely, stop using a car, because I've got a Safeway a couple blocks away, and then stopped with Audible and Netflix and that gym I should probably drop anyway because I'm not using it, and basically just cut it down to like, food, and then all these are housing. This is essentially housing. Housing again, and internet access. That's all you need, guys, is a roof, food, and internet access. Then it's only a 14% cut, so it's not like I can cut it in half by reducing these things. But I can make a significant improvement by selling all of this extra stuff. That also gives me more flexibility with my housing, because without all of these boxes of stuff, it's much easier for me to pare down and move into something that's more just like a rented one-bedroom. I omitted health insurance because it varies a lot, individuals versus families, and by age. And so, you look at this stuff and you're like, okay, well, what am I willing to give up? Am I willing to give up these yo-yos? Am I willing to get a roommate to reduce this housing budget? There's something called house hacking, where people buy homes intentionally that have extra rooms, or that, say, have an in-law suite. They live in the in-law suite and they rent most of the home to somebody else, and that allows them to pay down their mortgage much faster. What's left in this little minimal budget? So there was housing. Maybe a roommate could touch that. When it comes to food, you don't necessarily need cash flow to pay for food. If you volunteer at a food bank, that's one way to get food without paying for it with money. You're paying for it with time. And granted, that may not be the best use of time, but maybe it is. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe on your deathbed, you want to think, I made that food bank happen, and I feel great about that. Totally fair way to spend your life. I'm just pointing out that there are ways to get food that don't involve paying for it. And there are ways to get housing and pay less for it, even if sleeping on someone's couch is weird. There are weird people like me who potentially would rent their couch to someone. So, what are you willing to do? How much are you willing to push yourself? Can you split internet with a neighbor? I know some people in college who did that. Is it worth it to you? What are these big life goals do you have? I'm sorry, guys. It's like 11 p.m., so I'm getting all crazy. And when you think about I want to cure world hunger. Let's just say that for the sake of it. How much is it going to cost per person to cure world hunger? And then once you know that cost, what are you willing to do to get that much more money at whatever time it is in the future, so that you can help that one additional person? Sacrifice is painful. So every part of this is painful for me. I mean, literally, my back has hurt all day because of all the storage moving I did yesterday. That is actually painful. The selling of the yo-yos is emotionally painful, and looking at this budget and making the different cuts that I've made over time has been painful. Everything from all the sacrifices I made over 2 years to get all the money to pay off the mortgage, to, I mean, even back in 2014, cutting the subscription service I had for some role-playing game books that I really liked. Like, every time I did one of these things, I was like, ugh, don't really like doing this, but it's the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. And the thing is, yeah, it's painful. So, like, it's painful to go from here to here. It's painful to go from here to here. Every half step we make is painful. But if we make enough of them, we get to a point where the benefits of making those grow exponential. So in the beginning, you may make, let's have a unit of pain. It's called an up. So let's say this is 1 up. Oh, that's a weird pun. Okay. Anyway, a 1 up at this point doesn't get you very far. A 1 up at this point gets you a little further. You're definitely seeing some difference here. And then a 1 up from here to there, holy moly, it's like multiplied times 4, and then it only gets bigger. So these pain units over time, especially after you've put a bunch of effort into it for 5 or 10 years, really start paying dividends. And if your goal is to help people, and you're working on an enterprise that's going to say feed people, if that was your goal over time, then training yourself to do the incremental sacrifice for this 5 to 10 year period, you get used to looking for that next sacrifice. And by the time you get used to it and you're trained to look for the next thing that you're going to cut or the next thing that you're going to learn or push yourself to do, now you're like, whereas here it doesn't look like it made any difference. 5 or 10 years later, you're making a change that's a little painful, and you just helped 20 people. You just helped 200 people. You just helped 2,000 people. It grows exponentially when you get to the end of this. But it's a hard process. It's a hard process to constantly make yourself sacrifice in these different ways. And so it's not surprising that most people are not willing to sacrifice that much. This is a bell curve. And in the American bell curve, all these people in the middle are broke and in debt. And most of these people in the middle, certainly these people down here, are not going to retire well. They live paycheck to paycheck. If you want to succeed and help a lot of people and do something big that you're impressed with on your deathbed, you're going to need to get yourself to the top of this bell curve. And kind of by definition, if you're able to get yourself into the top 1%, the top 0.1%, you're going to be doing some unusual things to get there. To get extraordinary results, you're going to have to do things that the people around you are not willing to do. And they're going to notice. And they're going to think you're weird. And they're going to call you weird. And they're going to talk about how weird you are to other people. I'm weird. But it's not rocket science how this whole process works. If you want to do something great, if you want to get to this area, you're going to have to sacrifice more, you're going to have to push more, and you're going to be pushing more than all these other people earlier in your life. Do you want it? I mean, that's really a personal question. I want it. I've always known that I wanted it since I was like 8. So for me, yeah, I've not been perfect. I've made lots of mistakes. But I've always kept pushing forward, even if I, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 yo-yo back. That kind of thing, right? And so you got to ask yourself, what are you willing to do? What's worth giving up? What are you not willing to do? Why? Is that a good reason? Once you figure out what you're willing to do, that doesn't mean that, Like when your analytical brain says, like, yeah, I'd sell this if I knew it would feed a kid. That doesn't mean your emotional brain is ready to sell the thing yet. And a lot of times when we analytically know we need to do something, like I analytically know I need to sell these yo-yos, we're going to have to put into place things that push us emotionally in the direction of making that good analytical choice. So now it's up to me, for example, I've got to make this video. I've got to put a condition in place about, Lewis, if you want to buy that cool knife, you have to sell something within a week. Because I know that once I sell one thing, once I get in the habit of taking different angled pictures or scanning a barcode and letting eBay figure out what the book details are or whatever it is, once I start doing that, I'm going to get an assembly line process going because that's the way my brain works. And then each incremental item will be much easier. But I've got to do it. It's like starting a habit of long distance running. You've got to go through the first several horribly difficult and painful 3-mile runs before you can get to the marathon. Or before you can get to the habit that gets you to the marathon, for that matter. These are worth reading through. Are you willing to list something for sale? Are you willing to spend time in the evening and on the weekend developing your career? Are you willing to schedule and invest more time in planning? And if I had to highlight one thing that I see people not do enough of, it's planning. Planning allows all this other stuff to happen. Will you commit to spending on a budget? That's another huge one because the budget is basically a written plan. It is the plan living with you after you have finished the planning. And it allows you to compare your behavior to what you said your behavior should be to accomplish your long-term goals. On your deathbed, what do you want the story of your life to be? If you don't know, that's okay, but I think it's something worth thinking about. And if you imagine that you want some great things to be said, you can work your way backward through today's talk to figure out if you want a great life, you need to do some planning. You need to write the plan down and compare your behavior to what is laid out in the plan. And then you need to modify the plan and keep making incremental improvements to the plan faster than everybody that you know, so that you can get to the top area where you have the freedom and resources, money and human resources, they both take time and effort to develop, to build an enterprise that will outlive you and an enterprise that will leverage the talent and efforts of other people to work on big, important problems that you want to solve. All right, that's it for 5-Year Club video number 95. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed all of those blurry pictures of yo-yos. Have a fabulous evening.